very much for joining me. Patrick was my first teacher, the person who got me in improv and gave me a chance. And without Patrick, there would be no improv kid or John Moore for that matter, as you know him. My first question is, how long have you been in improv?
I performed professionally for 24 years, and then I've been semi-retired for 2.
How old were you when you got into improv?
16 when I first got started, much like you, I think. Well, you weren't much older than 16, 17.
I was 19 when I got signed. I was 18 when I got in, 19 when I got signed.
So similar. Teenager. I was 16. I was a sophomore in high school when I first got started, and my dad was a part of the comedy sports troupe, and so it was interesting but also annoying because it always consumed him. But when I became of age to do a community college course, I took a community college course on improv and theater, and that's what kind of really cemented the deal for me that I was interested in doing this and wanted to continue to do so.
And what's the difference between short form and long form?
The brain that you use is really more of the difference between the two. Short form improv, you're doing 3 to 5 minute games. Things are moving quickly. You're able to forget what you've done and move on to the next project. But long form, there's much more retention in place over the entire length of the work, because that could go anywhere from 25 to 60 minutes, and you're needing to stay present, but also kind of look in that rearview mirror and know where you came from, so that when you add new information, it's meaningful because it ties into old information. I just enjoy short form. I enjoy the silliness of it, the goofiness of it. There's certainly room for that in long form. But yeah, for my personality type, I think short form is more fun for me to perform.
Absolutely. When I got into improv, I felt like there was a divide between short form performers and long form performers. Why do you think that was?
I think a lot of long formers believe that short formers don't have the skills or the focus or attention span to be able to successfully be long formers. I think that there is sort of that divide because there just seems to be this idea of, well, I have to perform longer, I have to retain more, therefore my art is more intellectual and more highbrow than the short form art. And short form requires you to move in very quick and very definite, very succinct ideas. We don't have as much opportunity to tell. We have to show versus tell. And so I feel like with short formers, they also believe that they have the skills necessary because they can make an audience laugh in 30 seconds and try to get 12 to 20 good laughs in 3 to 4 minutes, and then they can move on to the next thing. They believe that they've got such a wide breadth in their repertoire that maybe that their art is a higher class. So I think that kind of seems to be the divide. And I will say though, as someone who has done significantly more short form than long form, I do feel that it was a more difficult uptake for me to go from short form to long form. And that is because it does require a different area of the brain, as we talked about before. So I feel like with some practice, it would be very easy for a short former to become comfortable in long form. Likewise, a long form performer who is looking to go to short form, again, can accomplish the same thing and be successful, but I think they're both going to have their own frustrations. The short former is going to be frustrated that they can't abandon ship and move on as quickly as they want to, and I think a long former might be frustrated that things seem kitschy or that they didn't have enough time to develop the story or the character that would satisfy them as a performer.
Absolutely. You've also been on the business side of improv. Why do you feel that it's easier to sell a short form show than a long form show?
It's easier to sell a short form show because of the familiarity of the general audience. Due to the success of Whose Line Is It and Wild and Out, there is a wider acceptance of that art form because it's something that people have seen. So it's easier to explain to them. Also, the audience participation in short form is a lot higher level, is a lot more interactive. And if somebody in the corporate world is looking to book a show, most likely they want to have members of their team involved, even if that's just yelling out a suggestion and not necessarily standing up with the performers and playing along with the game. So I think that the fact that they've seen it before in some level, and the fact that it's more interactive probably makes it an easier sell. The long form is going to need to have someone who has seen the product before and feels comfortable with it, or it's a product where the long formers can work with the company to help tell a part of the company's story through their work.
Absolutely. Do you wish that you would have done more long form in your life?
I do. I found it to be really rewarding. It was something I came across at the later end of most recently in my performing careers for improv. I do wish it's something that I would have done more of because I do feel like it would help me be a more well-rounded performer. I think it definitely did benefit my short form game by allowing me to create more interesting characters that have more obsessions or objectives, things that the characters wish and want, something to work towards. And long form gave me that. And also, there's a great sense of trust and camaraderie in a long form team because you are in it together for so long and you cannot necessarily move on to the next game. So I feel like that level of camaraderie would have been really important to me too, should I have done more and those teams developed further.
Sure. What was your favorite short form game?
I have to pick one.
Just one.
I think my favorite short form game would be Musical Day in the Life because we get a chance to tell a story. And it's an interpretation of an audience member's day in their life. It's something, it could be mundane or something interesting that happened to them, but we'll collect some information from them about that, and then we would replay that scene. We would retell the story to the entire audience. And what's great about that, where in that point of the game, is that everyone in the room is in on the setup. Everybody in the audience has heard the information, and so they have some, flag posts, some points of attention that they know to look for. And then the improvisers get to embellish. We kind of slalom between those points of attention, but then we get to embellish, in between there and make things, fantastic. Make things beyond belief or shine light on things that the audience members may have been thinking but the volunteer didn't say. But then we make it a musical, and so that we're able to bring in a lot of the musical tropes for musical theater, and everybody's day would be better with a soundtrack. Anything that you do throughout the day, if you had a little bit of music behind it, it would create emotion and attitude. It would just help set the setting. And so through Musical Day in the Life, we can take a moment, something as mundane as, the dog breaking the lamp, but we can make that into this very emotional, gut-wrenching, dramatic event through the use of that music. So I think that's why I love that game, because it allows us to be storytellers, it allows us to be characters, and it allows us to be musicians. Musical improv is using another level of your improv brain. It's remembering all the lessons, but then also being able to put together a rhyme, a song structure and a rhyme as well.
Absolutely. So that was your favorite game when it got called.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question is, what was your least favorite game?
My least favorite game was Billy Goat's Gruff.
I remember the name of that, and I remember that not a lot of people liked it. think that I enjoyed it because a lot of people didn't like it. Explain that game one more time.
So Billy Goat's Gruff is the retelling of a story. Could be a fairy tale, a nursery rhyme, or it could be a story that, again, like we've heard from Musical Day in the Life, or something from the audience. But the characters retell that story, the improvisers retell that story. But only one improviser is allowed to be on the stage at the time. So that one improviser is playing every character in the scene. And they're doing that by just using different positions on stage, physically finding a different position on stage and assuming a character voice and a character posture and a character attitude, and then being able to, on a dime, drop that, pick up another character, add information, continue the story. And another improviser, whenever they want, can simply tag that person out. And then they assume the established characters, and they're free to add more characters in. The reason why I never liked it is because it is so much going on that the give and take is not between the improvisers necessarily. It's an individual process until somebody tags you out. And being an individual process versus a team process, I think the retention really falls off.
Sure.
And there gets to be just a sense of confusion.
Sure.
So I've seen that game end in more confusing situations than successful situations.
Absolutely.
So for me, it was always one that was problematic. Whenever it was called, it was just like it's a hard swallow, and you just go, here we go.
I think that's why I enjoyed that game, is because I didn't have to feed anyone information. I just had to listen to the information that was already given, and I knew I couldn't mess it up because I'm the only one on stage. So I don't.
You trusted yourself more, or at least at that time, you trusted yourself more than your teammates.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting position to be in, because I think a lot of improvisers would say the opposite. I trust my teammate more than I trust myself in a lot of situations. You almost look to them as being, I guess you kind of just, I always felt like it was great to treat everybody that I was on stage with the respect that they had the better idea.
Sure. Sure,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah. So let's say it was a hard day at work. Maybe things didn't go well at home, and you're going to comedy sports. What exercise puts you in the zone to go do improv and leave all that other stuff behind?
Anything that involved, again, I'm going back to a little bit of music here. I always enjoyed the music warm-ups. Anything that had sort of a clapping involved, or some sort of chorus that was pre-established, and then we were able to create the verses on our own. But definitely the one exercise that always got me going, the one that I just wanted to like I said, leave it all behind and just feel like you're ready to just explode on stage, was a warm-up that we used to do called Who's Got the Flow?
Oh, yeah.
And so Who's Got the Flow was kind of that agreed-upon chorus where everybody who was performing in the circle that night, the chorus was Who's Got the Flow? Who's Got the Flow? Who's got the flow? Who's got the flow? And then you would pick somebody in the circle. So you'd say, John's got the flow, John's got the flow. And at that point, John would step forward, and everybody else except John is responsible for creating a beatbox. Didn't necessarily have to be hip hop style, but they were necessary for creating the music, a cappella. And then John would then freestyle rap for as long as he could hang in. And then once that John was done, he'd step back out of the center circle, and we'd all go back into the chorus. Who's got the flow? Who's got the flow? And everybody gets a chance to step up. But having the energy of creating the music, having the thrill of freestyling, by the time you're done and everybody's got the flow, we are definitely ready to get going.